They thought it was buried forever, locked behind palace walls, sealed by signatures, buried under layers of silence and loyalty. But now the whispers are getting louder, darker, and far more dangerous. Because according to Tom Bauer, there isn't just one recording of that explosive royal wedding. There are multiple copies, and they are quietly circulating. Not leaked, not exposed, circulating. And that changes everything. Because one hidden audio is a secret, but multiple copies? That's a ticking time bomb. The kind that doesn't explode all at once, it leaks piece by piece through the cracks of power. And suddenly, what was once dismissed as rumor begins to feel like a pattern, a system, a cover-up. Because here's the detail that people keep missing, the palace didn't just have a chaotic wedding behind the scenes, it had tension, friction, emotional clashes that were so intense that even insiders couldn't ignore them. Now imagine that environment. Staff running around, tensions rising, voices raised behind closed doors, doors that were supposed to stay closed forever. But what if they didn't? What if someone inside, someone trusted, someone overlooked, decided to capture it? Not for fame, not immediately, but for leverage. Because in places like that, power doesn't just sit on thrones, it sits in information. And information becomes currency. That's where things start to twist. Because Bauer doesn't just hint at one rogue recording, he suggests something far more unsettling, a quiet network of copies. Think about that. Not one device, not one leak, copies, which means duplication, movement, transfer. Someone recorded it, someone shared it, and someone else made sure it didn't disappear. Now ask yourself the real question. Why would anyone risk everything, career, reputation, legal consequences to keep copies of something like that? Unless it wasn't just a moment, unless it was proof of what was really happening behind the polished smiles and perfectly staged photographs. Because publicly, the wedding was a spectacle of perfection, historic, emotional, flawless. But behind the scenes, according to Bauer's long trail of claims, it was anything but calm. There were clashes over control, over protocol, over image, over power itself. And in that storm, something was captured, something raw, something real, something that wasn't meant to survive. Now here's where the story gets even darker. Because if multiple copies exist, then this isn't just about exposure anymore. It's about containment, control, damage limitation. Because the palace knows something the public doesn't. They know that a single leak can be silenced. But multiple copies, that's chaos. That's unpredictability. That's the kind of threat that forces quiet meetings behind closed doors. That's the kind of threat that turns insiders into suspects. Because now the question isn't if it exists. It's who has it. And more importantly, who's willing to use it. And suddenly, every past rumor starts to feel different. Every story about tension, every report of arguments, every whisper of conflict, they don't feel like gossip anymore. They feel like pieces of a puzzle that someone somewhere has already completed and stored safely, waiting for the right moment, the right price, or the right reason. Because let's be honest, if this audio is real, if these copies are real, then it's not just about what was said, it's about who said it. It's about tone, emotion, power dynamics, things that no written report can fully capture. Audio doesn't lie the way narratives do. It exposes pauses. It reveals anger. It captures truth in its rawest, most uncomfortable form. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Because once something like that is heard, it can't be unheard. It can't be rewritten. It can't be spun into a different story. It just exists. And that terrifies people who rely on controlling the narrative. So now the silence isn't peaceful. It's strategic. Because behind that silence, something is moving. Copies passing hands, files being hidden, decisions being made, and maybe, just maybe, someone is getting ready to break that silence. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Because things like this don't stay buried forever. They wait, they build pressure, and then one day, they surface. Explosively. And the most unsettling part isn't even the existence of those copies, it's the possibility that the people who hold them are not outsiders, not enemies, not random opportunists, but insiders. People who were there, who saw everything, who heard everything, who lived inside that pressure cooker environment where smiles were rehearsed and emotions were tightly controlled until they weren't anymore. Because if you go back and really look at the timeline, the cracks were already forming long before the ceremony reached its grand, picture-perfect climax. There were reports of tension, disagreements, last-minute changes, staff feeling overwhelmed, conversations turning sharp behind closed doors, and a growing sense that something was off beneath the surface. Something that didn't match the polished narrative being sold to the world. Now imagine being there, not as a royal, not as a guest, but as someone working behind the scenes, watching it all unfold in real time. You hear voices rise. You see frustration. You witness moments that were never meant to be documented. And in that moment, a decision is made. Quick, silent, irreversible. A device is switched on. A recording begins. And just like that, history is no longer just memory, it's evidence. But evidence is only powerful if it survives. And that's where this story shifts from shocking to strategic. Because a single recording could be confiscated, erased, denied. But multiple copies? That's protection. That's insurance. That's someone thinking several steps ahead, understanding that in a world built on hierarchy and secrecy, the only real power an insider can hold is something the institution cannot control. So now you have to ask yourself, how did those copies spread? Was it intentional, like a carefully planned chain where each person only knows the next? Or was it chaotic, a moment of panic where someone shared it with someone they trusted, who then shared it again until suddenly it wasn't just one secret anymore, it was a network of secrets. And here's the detail that makes this even more dangerous. When information spreads quietly, it doesn't lose power, it multiplies it. Because now, no one knows where it might surface. No one knows who might leak it first. No one knows who might already be negotiating behind the scenes, holding onto it like a silent weapon, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Because make no mistake, if this audio is real, it's not just gossip, it's leverage. Leverage that could shift public perception overnight. Leverage that could confirm years of whispers in a single, undeniable moment. Leverage that could turn carefully crafted narratives into fragile illusions. And that's exactly why the silence feels so heavy right now. Because it's not empty, it's loaded. There are people who know something, people who have heard something, people who are choosing very deliberately not to speak yet. And that yet is what changes everything. Because in stories like this, the truth doesn't come out in a controlled press release. It doesn't arrive with permission. It doesn't wait for the right time according to official schedules. It erupts unexpectedly, messily. And when it does, it doesn't just reveal one moment, it exposes the entire environment that allowed that moment to exist in the first place. Think about what that means. If a single argument, a single emotional clash is captured on audio, it doesn't stay isolated. It pulls context with it. It raises questions. It forces people to re-examine everything they thought they knew about that time, that relationship, that event. Suddenly, every headline, every interview, every carefully chosen word starts to feel incomplete. And that's the real threat, not just the recording itself, but what it unlocks. Because once people start questioning the official version of events, they don't stop at one question. They dig deeper. They connect dots. They look for patterns. And in doing that, they begin to see a version of reality that was never meant to be fully visible. And somewhere in all of this, there's someone holding a copy. Maybe more than one someone. Maybe someone who's already listened to it multiple times, analyzing every second, understanding its weight, its potential, its consequences. Maybe someone who knows that once it's out, there's no going back. Because exposure doesn't just affect one person. It ripples outward. It touches reputations, relationships, institutions. It forces responses. It demands explanations. And in a world where image is everything, that kind of disruption is not just dangerous, it's uncontrollable. So the waiting continues. The silence stretches. But it's no longer the silence of secrecy, it's the silence before movement. Because something like this doesn't stay hidden forever. Not when multiple copies exist. Not when too many people are aware. Not when the stakes are this high. Eventually, someone decides the risk is worth it. Eventually, someone presses play. And when that happens, it won't just be a recording. It will be a moment that changes how everything is seen forever.